Hey, congratulations. In a round. Yeah.
Okay, we are at 5 o'clock, so we will be starting in a heartbeat.
Like how everyone's eyes go flat when they turn 40. I can make these 40 now. I can't even see my kids.
Okay, good evening and welcome to our special council meeting. We call to order at 5:01. Please join me in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Land acknowledgement. The municipality of Port Hope exists on the lands of the Mishi, Saiga, and Nishnabeg traditional territory covered by the Williams Treaties. We honor and recognize First Peoples as rights holders and stewards of the lands and water on which we have the privilege to live, work, and play, including the Ganaraska Forest and River. We pay respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging. We commit to actions toward truth and reconciliation by recognizing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of the Indigenous Peoples, strengthening ties with First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, especially those who make their home in Port Hope, and learning from Indigenous ways of knowing and being. We do so by recognizing the past and working towards a shared future. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, staff and committee reports. 3.1 staff report FS 2223 regarding the 2024 community grants and donation requests. The purpose of the special council meeting is for the finance committee to consider community grants and donation requests that are proposed to receive funding in the draft 2024 budget. And I'll turn it over to our finance representative, Cassidy.
At the June 20th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting, a motion was passed for Council to reassume the responsibility to review and approve community grants and to hold a special meeting prior to budget deliberations to consider community grant and donation applications. Finance Committee received 17 community grant applications and 4 donation applications for review and evaluation. Each application is to be evaluated against the community grant policy submission requirements to determine eligibility for a community grant under the approved community grant program. In the 2024 draft budget, $195,000 is included for community grants aligned with the approved 2023 amount. Of that, $125,000 has been allocated to financially assist the organizations with foundational funding agreements. We recommend that Finance Committee identify community grant and donation requests that are proposed to receive funding in the draft 2024 budget.
Thank you. Our finance department has established a policy which they encourage council to use, and for the criteria of evaluating applications and objectives to fulfill the objectives of our community grant program. Councillor Mink has taken the time to also provide us with a format to guide us, and we thank you for that. And we'll be, I'm sure, be calling on that format. And we're here to make decisions. And to that end, if a councillor has made a comment that you agree with, there's no need to have to restate your position on it. So that'll keep things moving. I'd like to set an aspirational goal of 2 hours to complete this process and reach consensus. So with that in mind, I open up the floor for discussion. And how would you like to proceed? Would you like to go grant by grant or?
So through the chair. So in the past, when we did grant and donations, we've really just gone down the list and kind of decided, and then we would get to the end of the list and sometimes have to rethink what we just did. Privately myself, when I was looking at them, I would review and sort of categorize what's being requested into categories of what is sort of an essential service to the community. What would we be funding in another way if it wasn't through this grant request? And then I would look at one-day festivals or weekend events, and then activities that carried over throughout the year, and I would categorize it that way. So just for myself, I put together a chart as well that had different qualifiers, such as, is it something all the community can participate in? Does it give economic value to the town in one way or another, and a bunch of different qualifying factors. So I put that together and shared it with counselors, just to ask if they were interested in following that format. It also takes away the pressure from council with having personal relationships with some of these organizations and the members too, where we feel it's tough to have to say no or cut back on something that we are passionate about, but we really should be putting ourselves aside from personal relationships. So I just wanted to give that overview and ask the rest of council their thoughts on using a format like that, and I'm welcome to modifying it too if that's requested.
Thank you. Any further comments? Anybody else have any comments they want to establish for guideline purposes? Mayor.
Oh, there we go. It's just a little sticky. Thank you very much, Councillor Mink, for providing us with this. I think it's a great guidance, and really appreciate the time that you took to put this together and to provide us with some definitions and criteria. And I think it will be very helpful for deliberations today. So thank you very much.
Okay, let's get started. We'll handle the first grant application. Sorry, just lost my screen. The first one is Community Care Northumberland. Any comments on the application?
Les, maybe just a question on process. Do you want to go through them one by one, and then we're going to comment on and try and assign a dollar figure at that point, or do you just want to go through and like just maybe a little, because this is our first rodeo on this, so maybe just a little bit.
We can do it either way. If you want to assign dollar amounts to it now, or just have a discussion and then, yeah. What would you prefer, council?
If I could weigh in, council has over the years sort of varied on the approach, whether working through sort of individually and proving them as you go, or working through each one and providing some sort of direction towards the end. Recognizing, as Cassidy pointed out, our current evaluation metric is the policy itself. Attached to the agenda tonight, I recognize that we may be lacking in terms of a full assessment metric. I think that was developed largely last year when we had sent this out at council direction to a third party. Councillor Mink has provided the metric provided to council that could be used to sort of organize the grants as you see fit, but ultimately we rely on you to determine how you'd like to move through these and how you'd like to provide direction with respect to what's included in the draft 2024 operating budget.
I think we should try and use the okay, so this is typical of what we've seen in the past.
And then another question I would ask is, like, should we start with a dollar value? Because I think the recommendations, we have $70,000 that's available to us of all the grants that are put in front of us. Are we aligned on that figure? And if so, is that what we're distributing? Is everyone comfortable with that number? And if so, then, you know, we know that when we get to 70,000, we get to 70,000. And again, I put that to council.
Comments?
Thank you. So through the chair, I agree. I think that maybe we should take that 70,000, whatever, and use that as our limit. that's what we have in the budget available, and work on numbers through there, one by one.
Everybody in agreement on that?
I'm in agreement to an extent. I think 70,000 is a good target, but through discussion, if we decide to go up or whatever, based on valid arguments that someone may bring forward, then I think we need to be open to that. But to go for a target such as 70,000, I would agree with.
Okay, so Mayor Alana?
Yes, and I just wanted to get clarification on what the grant program is not intended to provide funding for, in particular, the point of to support programs or social services which are operated under the authority of another level of government, such as social services. I'm wondering if we can just get a little bit of clarification on that. What actually social services encompasses, because it can be broadly or more narrowly defined.
I think you're correct. I don't think a policy provides for a definition as to social services, so that's going to be subject to council's interpretation at this moment in time. This policy has been amended quite a number of times, as council's familiar, including, I think, as Cassidy mentioned, just within the last 6 months.
Deputy Mayor?
I agree. I think we probably need to start putting some some parameters around this, right? So we know what we are up. So maybe we do need to put some definitions. The other thing is, I think there were possibly 7. I don't recall off the top of my head. 7 applicants. Sorry, 6 applicants that were flagged because of their application. We should probably talk about those and decide whether or not we want to dispose of them or not.
And they were flagged because they either had not completed the application process, or they were in a surplus position. And what is council's wish to deal with? Let's deal with surplus positions. If they're surplus, they don't qualify. Council?
I'm going to echo a couple comments here. So you may not like this statement. We're spending money we don't have. Let's just call it as it is, first of all. So I like the ceiling max with flexibility, but let's be cognizant that this year is going to be a very challenging year. And I can appreciate the social needs of these individuals and of the programs. I just want that to be cognizant. And that will probably be echoing my statement here today. And I don't want to come across as the Grinch of Christmas. But at the end of the day, we have to be fiscally responsible, Chair. I think that is part of our duties here. And I think that format is good. And unfortunately, we have processes, we have policy. And if they have not adhered to that, and with the greatest respect, I think we have to excuse them and apply that percentage appropriately to the others.
You agree?
I'd like to actually put a motion on the table to actually follow through with that.
Okay.
So,
Sorry, anybody?
but before I do that, I also would like to offer up maybe a definition of what we might be considering for social services. So as I understand it, and this is pretty typical, it would social services would include things like income security, employment assistance, social housing, seniors care, child welfare, disability support, Indigenous affairs, and domestic and family violence services. That's broadly what would fall under social services, just as a starting point for conversation.
And are you going to be specific to the applications that are presented that are flagged as in your motion to not entertain grant applications for these 6? Okay, could you read out the 6?
The 6 we have listed on the report are Northumberland County Food Bank, Northumberland Hills Studio Tour, Northumberland Navy League Branch, Port Hope Rainbow Network, Sounds of the Next Generation, and Think Tiny Homes Northumberland.
So your motion will include all of those?
This is really difficult, and as this council knows, it's one of the reasons why I did not want to be returning to this process because it's difficult to make decisions about things that are in this community that are led by folks that we know either directly or indirectly. But if we're following what has been discussed at the table in terms of holding everybody into account about the expectations about applications and what is considered to be a full application or not, maybe this is part of those hard decisions that need to be made, but it's very
Councillor-
hard.
Councillor Clare and then Councillor Ming.
I'd like some clarity on the surplus piece. Is it based on the surplus on their financial statements from the previous year? Or is it showing a surplus on the event or campaign or organization proposed for 2024?
It's on the event.
Okay,
Or if it's some people don't submit an event one, they just submit an overall organization. So either or, but if we're choosing between the two, some organizations submit both. It's the event as per the policy.
okay. So I'm curious, Community Care Northumberland's not listed as one of the 6, but their statement did show a surplus as well. We're going to be consistent. If I'm looking at, I see a total net surplus of 1,764. And I guess my follow-up question would be, if the surplus amount is less or significantly less than the grant request, is there a reason why we wouldn't consider a grant request that would bring that into balance? Or are we excluding them on the basis of not having followed the instructions on the application? I just want to be clear, is this a policy or you didn't fill it in properly and therefore you don't qualify?
Just to be clear, staff aren't recommending excluding. We're simply identifying those outside of policy included in the report for tonight. These are all subject to council's consideration.
Could you repeat yourself, Brian?
I was just noting staff have not excluded any community grant opportunities, simply identified those falling outside of policy. They have been included like those others as they're subject to council's discretion.
Councillor Ming?
Thank you. I'm a little hesitant to use a surplus as the qualifier, especially because some of these events, depending on what they plan, could put themselves in a position where they don't have a surplus based on this criteria qualifying them. So I'll hire another band, so now I qualify for funding. So I'm hesitant to use that as the only qualification.
Councillor.
Yeah, I agree
Deputy
with what you're saying. Like, it's the financials, the way in which we take grant applications in certainly provides for that. The other side of that is also then don't put in your financials. Like, we have some applications who just they didn't submit any financials. And so they could be in a surplus. They could not be, we don't know, but we would proceed with them as well. So I don't know the answer, but I hear exactly what you're saying.
Carolina?
And I guess it comes down to then, why have a policy?
I do have the clarification that you were looking for, Councillor. We look at the 2024 projected surplus or deficit before the grant. So for Community Care Northumberland, they were in a surplus position after the grant was provided, but they were in a deficit before that. In terms of the actual statements that are requested, the policy states that we ask for the organization's statements, both prior year audited if they are available, or budget year proposed. And if it is for a specific event that they're asking for, they can provide the financial statements for the event specifically. And then we assess the surplus or deficit for the event at that point in time.
Chair, if I can make a suggestion, why don't we just go through the list, whether they qualify, don't qualify, get the macro, then we'll go, as suggested, qualifiers, as Councillor Ming said, right, I'm going to come up with a monetary amount based on who we believe as a whole is eligible and who we deem going forth for grants and go from there. Just to keep it going.
Is that acceptable to everybody? Okay. So, Community Cares North. Comments?
I would like to keep that on. I think it qualifies. I think it's a critical resource to our community, and it's part of the greater network of Northumberland County. It crosses boundaries. Essential service to bring people, for instance, home from hospice to bed. I think is something that we can't replace, and a lot of work has been put there, so we need to continue it going.
Marilena?
And this is where the difficulty runs. Maybe this is a problem with our just general policy again, right? What we're including or excluding, presumably that falls under social service, presumably that falls under something that a different level of government should be doing. So it's not that I don't agree with you about how critical it is, but arguably it is a social service, and arguably it's something that should be done by potentially a different level of government. And so I guess in pointing this out, I don't want to not talk about it, but I'm just pointing out that we have a tension here.
Yeah, I think you're right. There is a tension because I'll admit when I read their application and I thought about that service, I didn't think of it as being a social service. I saw it as being filling a gap in public transit, which is municipal. So I had that, in your rubric, you had replaces other services that we might be responsible for. So I kind of gave it a check mark on that basis because we don't have any other transit available in Ward 2.
I think I'm going
Councillor Adam?
I'm going to second what Claire just said. I saw it as a transportation type thing as well. I also did see where the confusion of the deficit thing happened there, which had changed the amount that I had allotted out to it already. I'm willing to say that when I've kind of gone through all of them and allotted how much money I thought each thing kind of, and I had allotted 8,000 for that, which would balance off that amount. Thank you.
Marilena and then Councillor Chris.
And again, I would be really happy to remove that altogether from our policy, because as we all know, as we're moving forward with all the challenges that are in front of us, I think it just provides a further complication to try to sort out where things begin and end when we're talking about these things. So maybe it's worth actually
If I could, Chair, I hear and I echo everybody's statement. Maybe it would be easier, let's reverse engineer this. And is there anything up there that any counselor feels that would feel not qualify at this stage? Because I think we've all done our homework. Based on whatever methodology we've used, let's bring it forth, let's have a discussion. Let's vote then on whether we are going forth with that particular one. If it's turned down as a council. That's the democratic way. And then we'll proceed with the others and award the monetary amounts.
May I just offer doing the opposite? If there's one up there that's absolutely critical, that we all can agree that this is one we feel passionate about. I think that, like the Santa Claus parade, for instance, I think, that some of these up here, I think are almost, it seems, I don't want to use the word no-brainer, but it seems like we're going to do it. So let's just get those ones out of the way.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's start with Santa. Okay, what was the ask for Santa? 6, and we got him last year. Anybody want to take a stab? Yeah, money.
Chair, I'm having a hard time here. We won't know how many we'll come up with out of the essentials. I believe we still have to establish how many we have, because we only have so big of a pot. And I'm not willing to myself, I'm not going past that 70,000.
Yeah, and that's
But
fine.
if I want to give Santa Claus Parade 50,000 right now, then. No, where I'm
I
going
don't
with
think
this is
you'll
a
have
fictitious
support.
amount, but the problem is if we started awarding now with not knowing the totals,
Well, what we've done in the past is that, you know, Councilor Mink has suggested, take the obvious ones, put in a temporary figure and see what we've got at the end of all our discussions.
Why don't we just put a yes for those and then figure out the amounts later?
Why go through two processes?
Because if we end up saying yes to 15, that's going to impact how much
Okay.
we might allocate to each, right?
All right, so
Can-
everybody's comfortable with yes, no, okay? All right, so Santa Claus parade, yes? Okay. What is the next priority for people?
Oh, sorry, may I just ask, can you highlight a cell for yes or something so we could keep track? Okay, thank you.
Councilor Clare?
I'm going to bite the bullet because I know we're all going to dread the no's. So I'll get us started, the ball rolling on that. And I hate to do it because I think it's a good organization that does great work, and I've personally benefited from their services. But when I read the proposal this year from Grief Stories, I didn't see a lot of evidence that it was it was going to fund pieces of work that were going to be of specific benefit to Port Hope. The things that they said that they were looking to fund were really about expanding their audience to other communities, which I think is a very valuable thing. And I wish them all the best and hope that they can seek other funding. But I'm not sure that for me, that makes the cut when we've got so many other local benefit proposals in front of us.
And just a codicil to that one of the organizations in town that receives public donations supports Grief Stories. So indirectly, Port Hope is supporting this. But thank you for that. Next. Either for or against? We don't have to vote. We just do.
I think
Do you
if
wanna
it's
vote on each
sort
one?
of subject to the chair's discretion, if you want to work through these, we've done this through the budget, not necessarily for community grants, but if you're looking to informally work through these in order to work through them all, provide some sort of consensus to us as soon as that's clear. You can capture that in some sort of motion later on in the process where you're formalizing your direction to us. Is that okay?
Next suggestion? Deputy Mayor?
I'm going to put a pitch in for Cultivate. I think that it does great tourism, Ward 1, Ward 2, hits all the notes on community across age groups and abilities. There's year round, it's not a one-off. I think it should be on this list.
Mink?
Thank you. So I asked staff for some history on Cultivate. Because last year we did give a substantial amount, in the past years we didn't. It did continue to operate even though we did not fund it. The Cultivate, some of these events that I'm looking at that charge admission. So let me just back up. So we have to keep in mind that there are many people in our community who are running events, and I could list off a whole list of them, who put on very successful events for no cost to the municipality. They have an operating model that some of them are free for everybody and some of them charge admission. So I'll use the Fall Fair for an example. They did come at one point asking for money, but now they're operating on their own. There's other events, one that I'm involved with, Heroes Highway Ride, that puts on a huge event, doesn't ask for a cent. So when we're looking at some of these one-day events or weekend events, I just want us to keep in mind that if there's an admission being charged, which eliminates a portion of the community, to me that, you know, that's their model for operating. And if they have venues within their event where those participants are paying concessions, some of those concessions may not even be local. It's not really, once they pay in that event themselves, they're not spending any more money here. So the Cultivate, the rural, I live rurally and I don't see it when it happens. at a particular location. Here, hibernate during the winter. It's during a downtime, something at that point, maybe it helps. But I just want to think critically about some of these weekend events.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, no, I hear your point. In how does that intersect with the amount of money that comes into the rest of the community outside of the gates and so on? Because it does draw a lot of people. It supports local businesses and so on. Like I appreciate what you're saying about not all of the community can go inside the gates, but what's the benefit to the community outside the gates?
Councillor Clare?
I would support giving a grant to Cultivate. I think given our cap, the amount that's requested this year is not feasible. So I wouldn't support spending half of our budget on it. I would also say too that when the part of the operation that I think is worth us considering in terms of funding is the free programming that they offer that is very inclusive. I know I was down at the park every Thursday in the summer, and it was very well attended, and that's free and accessible to everyone. And I think also creates a bit of a tourism draw. So maybe we can keep in mind when we're thinking about the amount we allocate in terms of which parts of their activities we're interested in supporting, but I would support a grant this year.
Mayor?
And no, and I would also agree with that. I think it's one of the events that's really identity making for this community, and it's something that we're known for. And I think it's a really important part of what we do offer. And I do understand though what you're saying, Councillor Mink. It's makes it a bit more, difficult to contemplate. But I do think that overall, if you consider both the downside and the upside, I still think it's a growing identity maker for Port Hope.
Any further comments?
So I agree that I understand the business model part of it too, and I think something like Cultivate is a little bit different, where it's two sides. So one of the sides is just a free event for Port Hope. I love that part of it, and then there's the business side of it too, where they're charging admission and they're doing their business side. I agree. 35, I think it's 35,000 is a little bit significant, but when it comes down to the Road to Cultivate, which is 9 different events, that's a lot. So even if it was like $1,000 per, that's not a lot for each event. So I agree. I think it should be a green.
Okay, so unless there's further discussion, we'll make that a green.
Can we move on to the next one? Just because I have a recommendation based on that same model then. The Northumberland Hills Studio Tour is also a free event, and they did quantify in there that $36,000 of sales was generated to those artists that wouldn't have had those sales. That doesn't include money that was spent in town for other reasons as they're going out. It brings in, we don't have a CIP program or anything like that for these artists who live outside of the downtown area. It is a weekend activity, and under that same argument for Cultivate, I think that $2,000 is a minimal amount for what they're asking for. But with that, I think that we also have an opportunity to help Northumberland Hills Studio Tour advertise their event in other ways, such as at the Capitol, for instance. We have space there, and we have other opportunities to help them.
I'm going to suggest too, the Navy League be given consideration and Rose Quest.
I second the Navy League, and I was going to suggest that as part of a comment on that. I think it impacts 4 of the requests. I think if I've got that right. I think I saw there's 4 requests that are about children and youth programming in the community. There's the NORAC, there's the Navy League, then there's Song and La Jeunesse. And I think to Vicky's, Councillor Mink, sorry, we're formal today, to Councillor Mink's point, in my view, we should prioritize the ones that are providing free and totally accessible, inclusive programming to all children in the community, as opposed to those that are charging a fee for service. And it's more of a business model for the programming they offer.
Then I agree, and I would take that same point and add Northumberland Pride to it. It's an entirely free event. It speaks to diversity, equity, inclusion. It's drawing from across Northumberland into Port Hope, as most of the programming is going to be held here. And as a free event, I think it should be supported as well.
For me,
Just to take a step back to the Navy League, and this is just a suggestion, we may not be here at this point yet to discuss this, but just a thought to put in our heads is that a big portion of this is for the structure itself and improvements that are needed. And in the past, we have done, for instance, Wesleyville, Capitol Theater, when they're looking for funds to support a structure, we've done a price or fund matching model with the community. And I know the Navy League had great success getting community participation for their trip to Iceland. So we may have opportunity there to engage the community with some help as well for this activity. It is a model we've used before, so it's aligned with that.
I would agree with that. If we also extended it to Song and La Jeunesse, they both have the capability of raising funds, and we got to eventually wean some of these people off, because you can see the new grant applications coming in, and some of these have been perennials. So it's time to, if we're going to provide grants, maybe we should look at matching funds for these organizations that have the capability. So looks like we turned 4 greens on that. And I don't care if the whole thing's green. It just means everybody gets lesser amounts. I mean, I'm sorry. So Chris?
I'm proposing, Think Tiny Homes Northumberland. I'm proposing a no. My rationale with that is I understand the nexus of it. I'm a very strong, trust me, advocate of tiny homes, but not in this application. I believe the responsibility and accountability for housing, it does directly go to the county. They own that. They're based out of Cobourg. It has a more of a county focus if you read the application versus our municipality. Having said that, everybody has to do a little bit of onus and take responsibility for the homeless. It's not what I'm cataloging here. I'm just saying the application itself is more of a county versus Port Hope.
Councilor Clare?
I'm gonna disagree on that one. And just to put it out there, the reason I actually put that down as one that I thought we should fund, on the basis of that question again about providing a service that we might otherwise provide. So I'm thinking about the fact that we have our a CIP for affordable housing coming forward, and there's going to be some things that we're going to want to invest in terms of encouraging people to put in ARUs, encouraging people to develop affordable housing. And if this is going to be an asset that could be useful for us in advancing that in Port Hope, and something that our planning department could use to help people along in the process, I think that this would be a pretty good investment.
You know, I don't disagree. It's a good idea, but I think just like ARUs, ADUs, we need to become more systematic in how we're relaying information about that. And I think we should be pressing the province for some funds to do this kind of work. I don't think this should be coming out of our community grants or the county for that matter, something county-wide for both of those initiatives.
Councilor Adam?
I think it's a red as well for me. I had already written this down in my little thing, but even when you read what they're going to use the grant for, it does even specifically say that it's for developing and launching one-step web-based toolkit for building ADUs in Northumberland County. I believe that this is more of a county type thing. It's not our tier of government to work with. So
Red to me so far.
Can I just ask for clarity? I had mentioned 4 children and youth programs, and that I wanted us to prioritize those that provide free programming, and I think only 2 of the 4 provide free. So I didn't intend to mark all 4 as green. I intended, and for council's consideration, I had intended to say Navy League and Song. As to my knowledge, those are the ones that provide free programming in the community, and the other 2 are pay paid programs, is my understanding.
So La Jeunesse,
Which is not to say I'm against the other two. I just said I wanted to prioritize the other two, but I'm certainly open for the others. La Jeunesse and NORAC, the aquatics.
Move those back to white, and council can deal with those two specifically.
West on there? Okay. Okay, next, I sort of, in my own mind, when I categorize, I not necessarily by list, but by groups. And I think seniors need our attention. Feeding the people need our attention, and youth need our attention, just as a general overview. Councillor Adam?
To go right with what you were saying, I'd like a green for the food bank.
I think that's absolutely essential, especially now that we know just short distance away from us, 1 in 10 people are now relying on food banks, and so it's essential.
Everybody in agreement? Councillor Mink?
Yes, I'm in agreement, but I have another point to make. So I'm not sure, did we put Community Care Northumberland as green yet? At the very top? No. So I would like to make that recommendation. I think people rely on it, and we're really stranding a lot of people if we do not. I think there is potential discussion about whether this should be something that's moved to the county, because it is a county-wide network, and coming to municipalities, if we opted out, that would be very bad of us to do that, but I think maybe that's something we can look at. But I just wanted to talk about NORAC for a minute, because I gave this one a lot of thought. I read through it, and they've had a huge decrease in their membership. And I thought about this very critically. So when I look around at our parks facilities, and I look at our ball diamonds, for instance, we have some great ball diamonds that are sitting empty. And we're investing into municipal money into that, and we don't have a ball club anymore. So I think we need to look at NORAC very carefully, because we want our swimming facility to be used. And if that club were to dissolve, then we're investing into something that is not being used. NORAC also gives us exposure outside of the community. I do follow swimming because I have a cousin who's a competitive swimmer, and on provincial, national, and international levels, those clubs are being mentioned and they're being recognized, and the communities that have these clubs are being recognized. But with that, it is Northumberland County, and we provide a pool for other municipalities that don't have pools. So that club, if you're listening, I think if you haven't already, there's an opportunity to ask for donations from some of the other municipalities, because your swimmers are coming from other places as well. So I would like to stay that as a green for consideration, maybe not the full amount, but I think that thinking of it in that perspective, I think it does add value to our community and our facilities.
Any comments from anybody else? Do you want to make that a hard green or a nice white?
A soft green.
If we could get the same consideration, I think we started considering Community Care Northumberland, just looking for your consensus on that particular application as well.
Councillor Mink, I'm with you with Community Care Northumberland, with the caveat that this is something I'd like to actually bring to the county council table and really advocate for the future. I don't think I can meet you on the swimming.
yeah, I'm not sold on NORAC either, but I'm going to take another breeze through this. If we can maybe just put a pause on it for right now, but I'm not sold on it right now either.
Thank you. So when it comes to the NORAC thing, I am not sold on all that money either. And maybe the director can help me out with this, but for the land equipment, I think that's more than what the PRC department owns in land equipment. So I'm not a big fan of how much it is, but maybe a little investment, but I'm not a hard green either.
Did you want to comment, Director?
I can certainly comment through the chair. Excuse me. So specifically related to NORAC, they are a regular user of the pool. So they fit into our regular fee schedule, which is a subsidized rate for youth. So they use our facility at a subsidized rate. That is applicable across the board for any of our user groups. So the notion from a ball club, we do still have the Northumberland Jacks who use that. It is an amalgamated organization who use our ball fields. Same thing, they have a subsidized rate. So specifically, I know we've had requests in the past for groups that use our facilities, and that's been a conversation of council in the past. So that's what I can say. Currently, they are using the facilities based on our existing fee schedule. Related to the specific request about dryland training or equipment, I can get into the detail if I look at it specifically what we spend on an average from a aquatics equipment. If you want me to do that, I can do that. I just would need to dig a little bit deeper, but it would be, I would guess, be in comparison to the requests that NORAC has put forward for our full funding for an aquatics year for our program supplies. So that may give some context.
Okay. Any further discussion? That appears to be a red. Okay. Did we, Community Care Northumberland, did we agree upon a green for that? Yes, okay. Okay, so logically, let's go to Greenwood Coalition. Anybody care to speak to this? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I'll speak to it. In their grant, they spoke specifically about community gardens, which I think are going to be really important as we move forward over the upcoming years. I think, food is something no different from the way in which we spoke about the food bank. If funds are going towards community gardens, I think it's a worthwhile investment.
Yeah,
Mr. Clerk?
I second that because I think to my knowledge, the community garden, it's a garden and it's about growing food, but it's also about building community and having people from different walks of life work together on a common project. It's a gathering place for people who are quite marginalized in our community. So I do support a grant for that one as well.
My comment is they can do all that without a grant from the municipality. They do get outside funding. They are quite capable of raising funds and have shown that in the past. So do they really need our money at this stage? We've been supporting them for a number of years. Anybody else? Councillor Mink?
Yeah, so it's a hard one for me because I do recognize all the amazing things that they do in the community. I do agree with you that there's a ton of people in the community that can help with growing. We have an agricultural community outside our doorstep, so there is a lot of opportunity there. But the point that you had made, the last point, is some of the grants that what continues to run in my mind is which one of these grant requests come back year after year after year after year. And when I went through every single one of these applications, I immediately scrolled down to question number 9, I think, which is what's your plan to stop asking for grant money? Sorry to put it that way, but Greenwood Coalition, I think that year after year they do fantastic work. So I would like to fund them some money, but again, it's a matter of that stays in the back of my mind is how long do we continue with some of these organizations?
Yeah, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, Julie, do we have a community gardens that we're taking care of or are in our inventory that that the municipality owns and runs?
So through the chair, currently there are not any within our inventory. We, through the PRC Advisory Committee, have established a plan for looking at community garden potentially to be hosted at Kingsfield. That was included through the Kingsfield concept planning. There's been another various conversations that have come forward about looking into those options, but we don't currently have a program in place.
Okay, thank you.
What is the will of council on Greenwood Coalition? Green? Okay, green. Thank you. La Jeunesse, did we discuss that and make it a red?
I'm a red on that one because I believe they charge for the kids who take part in the program. It's not a very large number of kids. And then they also do charge for the event in question as well.
There's a red. Could you scroll down further, please? Jazz Festival. Any thoughts on that? Is it a paid admission type thing? What does our money do for them?
So using the sort of the same logic as we had discussed previously, I would say, look, this is another one of those opportunities to create maybe more of a presence of a jazz festival in the community and drive a little bit of, tourism and event for, it does have ripple effects for the broader community. So I'm feeling pretty sympathetic towards this application for those reasons.
I'll start at that end this time.
Thank you. As a tourism driver, I love the Jazz Festival. I think it's wonderful. I realize that, there's some costs associated there, but they have also made sure that they made a pivot and they're actually driving people into our businesses as well. And that is why I am 100% supportive of, as they are actually supporting our economic development as well.
Councilor Mink, then Councilor Clare.
Yeah, so I also supported this. It is an activity or an event that doesn't ask for money on a regular basis. It was one that I used as a base of all the other weekend activities that happen, and I looked at them as a model that if they're able to come forward and ask for only $5,000 for the weekend, which does bring people into town, that's what I used for the other weekend activities as my budgeting model. I put the baseline at 5,000 for all of those that I categorize that way. So I do support 5,000, and I would hope that some of the other activities we could use that as a baseline.
You.
I just wanted to say, I really appreciated that they had metrics in there about their audience. That was really helpful. And to say that 73% of ticket purchasers do not have a Port Hope address, to me, that demonstrates that they are bringing people into the community, and that's got to be generating some economic benefit. So kudos to them for making it really obvious for us that we should support it.
Green light.
I would like to propose, if we can, that we just actually put in the approval line 5,000 for these folks for all of those reasons.
We're not there yet.
No, but I'm going to Councillor Mink's point and just the metrics and how they drive directly into our local businesses with their venues and also the attraction. Just echoing, I think, what Councillor Mink's saying very much for this particular group, and the metrics they provided is excellent.
We're going to take all the lobbying after 6 o'clock. Okay, so that's a green. But thank you. Okay, the Rainbow Network. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I actually had a comment about the Gathering Festival. That was actually where my head was at, so I might just jump down to that one. I'm really curious about this one. I find there's a lot of intriguing elements to this application. I think it is one of those events that is branching out into where our community is going, and I think it has the potential of doing some really great things for the community. Yeah, I would advocate for this. I think there's something interesting in here that we should be looking at.
I would like to echo that, because as we're again going back to who continues to come forward, where are the new ideas, where are the opportunities for growth and supporting some innovation, for all of those reasons, I really like some of the things that are part of this particular application.
Green light. Okay, next. Port Hope Gathering Festival. No. Red.
You changed the topic.
Okay. All right, thank you. So did we green light it? Okay. All right. Okay, back up to the Rainbow Network. Any opinions? I have no opinion on this. Councilor Chris?
So if you look at, you gotta look at the historical values and et cetera, et cetera. Has it been positive for the community as a whole? So the answer is yes. We'll use Councilor Mink's metrics there, and I did at home. I am neutral, but it's positive in regards to what it hopes to accomplish. And I'll just leave it as simple as that.
Claire?
Yeah, I would support providing some form of grant. I did note on that one, I found the budget confusing, so I wasn't sure in terms of the amount of allocation. The total didn't actually add up with all of the line items, and I had some question marks about some of the line items. But overall, in terms of giving a grant, yes, I support.
Councilor Adam and then Councilor Mink.
I was about to say the same thing. It's a green for me. I don't necessarily agree with maybe the way that they've done their budgeting there, but it is a green to support in some sort of fashion.
Well, no, I agree. I think there's I see two components of the Rainbow Network. There's the event that they have during Pride Week, as well as an ongoing community involvement. It creates a safe space, if that's the right way, and a networking opportunity. So I think that that part of it is definitely valuable. But I do want to point out Northumberland Pride, the event that the Rainbow Network has in the park, and last year we had another Pride request come forward. So it's becoming very apparent to me that this is something that the municipality may think about starting to take on as a municipal event. And some of the groups themselves as participants in venues of that week. It's obviously something that's missing. I'm thinking, just seeing the applications over the past 2 years.
You. Green. Friends of Wesleyville. Okay. Is that it for the, okay, so the question I have is that council has 5,000 allocated in their budget for donations. Is that part of the 70 or not?
The donations are separate. We'll deal with those.
Okay, because it was referenced in this document,
Correct.
that-
Yeah.
but I didn't know.
No,
So
these are the
it's
community
outside
grant-
of all of this.
Community grant portion,
Okay,
correct.
super. So we're going to take a 5-minute break now, and then we're going to get the money allocations. Okay, good work so far. Thank you.
I really am.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think we've made amazing progress in a short period of time. And we have even a shorter period of time to allocate money. So how would you like to proceed with this? Would you like to go from one top to bottom, or? No. Top to bottom, you answer my question first.
Top to bottom is fine.
Go ahead with your question.
Just a question about Santa Claus Parade. I noticed that, well, we have a Canada Day parade, and I know the organizers of both parades are the same people. So I'm curious just to know, why is one run by the municipality and the other one go through the grant process?
So through the chair, following the notification from the Port Hope Kinsmen in 2018, that they were no longer able to manage Canada Day events based on their capacity, there was a report submitted to council that there were options, and council directed staff to manage the requirements or the plans from a Canada Day standpoint, which includes the parade. The Santa Claus Parade has a community committee that has been longstanding. We did experience a number of times where the committee membership dwindled, and we put in a lot of effort last year to engage the community in that process. From a staff perspective, we have done a lot of review internally of the parade, in the sense that it is strongly and heavily liaised by municipal staff through the events team. So currently, there is provisions of, through events, through Jeannie as the lead, coordinating insurance requirements for Santa Claus Parade as an example. So, from a staff perspective, it was, let's try and engage the community to manage this committee, and be sure that the event is still held in the community. So we have a number of people who are participating on the committee at this point in time. That may change in the future, and staff have been working through some conversations about potentially, as we come through the foundational funding trial, perhaps Santa Claus Parade is one that we examine, whether it should be foundational funding so that it's not coming forward from a community grant standpoint, or whether it is something we should work with the community group and transition that to be held as a municipal event where we would see some efficiencies as well.
And I wholeheartedly agree with you, because we would never, ever consider cutting the Santa Claus Parade. So we may as well make provisions for it to become foundational in the future. Does that answer your question?
It does, but then I have two follow-up questions. The Candlelight Festival the night before, the first question is who runs that? And second question, you can answer at the same time. I recognize Jeannie has submitted this, so I trust that the numbers would be very accurate, in comparable to the Canada Day Parade. Would you suggest that would be accurate?
Yeah, so I'll speak to the Santa Claus Parade cost first. So the community grant that has been submitted only covers a portion of the parade. In general, the parade costs between $10,000 and $14,000. That cost is going up with the relation of cost for bands increasing. We're seeing that across all of our special events for performers and entertainers. So there is, the provision for fundraising donations specifically related to the Santa Claus Parade, and we also manage that for the Canada Day Parade as well. So the cost from a Santa Claus Parade standpoint does align with the cost for delivering the Canada Day Parade, which is also included in our base budget from an operating standpoint. Your question related to, and I can have Jeannie speak to this as well, related to the Candlelight Festival. Again, there's history there in the sense that it was liaised by the municipality. So the municipality hosts the event in collaboration with supporters. The HBIA, Critical Mass, a number of new participants have come on board in the last number of years as well. Jeannie, is there anything that you want to add related to that?
Nothing to add, just to clarify, I guess, the difference between the Canada Day and Santa Claus Parade overall budget. So having experienced both now as a council team, the Santa Claus Parade is a standalone event and is costs more to run than the Canada Day Parade. We bring in many more bands, and there's other logistics that are built in and the marketing spend related to producing the Canada Day as a standalone event. The Canada Day Parade, everybody else has their Canada Day event on the same day. And as you may see in comparison from attending both parades, that the size of the parade is different. But that budget for the Canada Day Parade is built into the overall budget for the Canada Day event, which has many other components that the Santa Claus Parade does not have.
Thank you. Thank you. And the reason I asked about the Candlelight Festival is just along the thinking of Canada Day and the parade, bundling it together, Candlelight, Santa Claus being the next day. Just my mind is thinking, how could this potentially in the future be bundled into a big event?
Be warmer if we had the Santa Claus Parade with the Canada Day Parade. There's a bundle. Okay, so moving along. Now we get to allocate the 70,000, not 70 million, $70,000 of funding that we have available. And we can do by priorities. Yeah, Adam and Councillor Adam.
So I just thought if we started right at the very top there at the Community Care Northumberland, my suggestion is $8,000. As when I look through it, I believe that if we gave them $8,000, that would kind of be that break even, maybe just a little bit above.
If I can make a suggestion to, thank you, Chair. If I make a suggestion to council, Deputy has done just a baseline to plug in all the numbers based on what we have right now. I think it gives us a good starting point to either go upwards or downwards based on what we had as a target of 70,000 with everybody we have approved up to this point. So I make a suggestion we plug in the tentative numbers that the deputies come up with and then have those discussions going from line to line.
Is there any thoughts on that? Any objection? It's as good a starting point as any, or would you like to take your marker and go up to the screen?
So we're just gonna, Cassie, we're just gonna input the numbers as we hear them, if that's council's wish at the time. Okay.
Okay, so Cassie, what we had was community care at 9,500. Cultivate at 15,000. Greenwood at 5,000. Northumberland County Food Bank at 8,000. Northumberland Hills Studio Tour at 2,000. Navy League at 5. Northumberland Pride at 6,700. Port Hope Jazz at 3. Rainbow Network at 800. Santa Claus Parade at 3,000. Song at 4,000. The Port Hope Gathering Festival at 5,000. And Rose Quest Personal Care at 3,000. And if the math works, that's 70,000. So there's a starting place for people.
Okay, Mayor.
Thank you for doing that. It's a great place to start. I think that if I'm looking at just some of the metrics and maybe principles of what we're putting here, I would like to reduce Northumberland Pride to 5,000.
I think we'd look for the consensus of council here before individually adjusting these.
Consensus au temporaire. Okay. Next, anybody comments? I think you.
Yeah. On the Community Care Northumberland, I think to Adam's point, that what they require in order to break even and not run a surplus is 7,750. So I'd recommend that we lower the grant amount to that amount.
Councillor Mink?
I'm not comfortable with that. We have always given Community Care Northumberland the grant amount that they're asking for. I I'm troubled to know what service our community may be not getting by not giving them what they asked for. I am curious though, and this is kind of, I don't know if because this is coming back into the actual budget, I would like to know, do most other municipalities match it like for like? Is this their operating model? I don't have that awareness because I don't want to undercut ourselves on such an essential service to a huge portion of our community.
Our suburb in Coburg do not have as benevolent a grant program as we do. In fact, theirs is, I think, $20,000 to $30,000.
But Coburg is urban. This is for the rural communities.
That, but I have no idea.
If I could just clarify, the lower amount would not reduce the amount of money they're spending on the program. What it does is if you look at their balance sheet, it shows that after the grant from us, they would have a small surplus of 1,700 and change. And so I'm suggesting that we remove that surplus amount from the grant amount so that they get the funding they need for the program they've proposed, but we're not funding them to run a surplus.
We will see where we end up at the end too, so there could be some leeway here.
Thank you. So mine's going to be a little bit different than everybody else's. Is Northumberland Fair Share Food Bank. When I went through theirs, and food is a big thing for me, obviously, but when I went through theirs, I believe they said that they support 104 families per week, which is 205 people per week. And when I did the math, I believe it came out to 10,300. Let me just double check. I know I did the math somewhere. $10,660. So that $8,000 doesn't even give $1 per person. And I would actually like to increase that to $10,660, which would be $1 per person.
Mayor Olena?
I am so sympathetic to what you've just said. You know, Adam, and in fact, if we think about triaging all the things in our community, then, you know, we would be focusing on some of the essentials. But I do know that they get donations from other sources. And so I'm just putting that out there to say that we're not the only ones that are contributing to their bottom line, but I'm also open to have a conversation about it.
Councillor Mink?
Aligned with the Northumberland Pride and the Port Hope Gathering Festival, which is 5,000, I would like to give Port Hope Jazz also 5,000, all being weekend events, and then Cultivate. I'm taking out the actual Cultivate Festival where there is a revenue opportunity, a significant one there. I think that should be 10,000 to help fund the park only, as well as Hibernate.
Deputy Mayor, then.
I can support what you said about the Jazz Festival, but not Cultivate.
And I'd suggest when we're working through these, there's going to be future conversations after we're dealing with each one, but just for us to be able to track this, speak to one at a time as best we can, I think that's going to be helpful.
Well, maybe we can start then with Port Hope Jazz. I think if we are taking the same sort of principled approach of, then even though they only asked for, I would be supportive of giving them 5 as well.
We'll just leave it for now. And I have a question. Le Jeunesse, what did we give them? And what did we give Song?
Can we just circle back to Jazz? The suggestion was there's some discussion here about increasing what's currently at 3 to the full request of 5. if we could get some consensus on whether or not we're changing that to 5 at the moment.
For the Jazz Festival? Do we have consensus? Okay, yeah, we have consensus. Okay, and then I'm back to song. I can't see the numbers from here because of the glare. What did they ask for?
75, 75.
I have an issue with this, in that this is, I know it supports and it's all free and it's across jurisdictions, and they have the ability to raise money if they want. And I would suggest that we go to 3 and be it matching funds to encourage them to start fundraising, as opposed to keep coming back to the trough. Deputy Mayor?
No, I would like to advocate for song because it is free programming. They try and maintain free programming. They target marginalized and underserved community. There's a lot of programming that goes in there. I appreciate the fact that they do fundraising and so on. I understand what you're saying for matching, but I think for what they're doing in this community and for the people that they serve, this is an important program.
All parts of their user base are not under marginalized.
I would say, though, that all of their user base are experiencing a gap in that there is no more arts education happening in our schools. There is no opportunity to learn to play an instrument anymore. So for most kids, it's now not attainable unless they can access free programming like this. So again, I went back to, I really found that one criteria in Councillor Mink's rubric about, is this providing something that might otherwise be provided? You know, we have a Parks and Rec program. We don't have to do a lot of arts programming necessarily through our own municipal services, because we have organizations like Critical Mass, like Song, that are out there providing free programming to people who wouldn't have access otherwise.
Our neighboring communities put the contribution as equal to ours. Councillor Mink?
But I think to Les's point is, and I'm not just saying song, but I'm saying all of these is the organizations or activities that continue to come back year after year to ask for money. Are we accepting that this is based on the arguments, which I'm not disagreeing with? Is this going to be how it is every year? Then we just go into service level agreements and we don't do this. Or do we set them up with a model to help them on the path of their own fundraising and finding their own success so that they can eventually stop relying on this opportunity?
Mayor Elena?
I think that's such an important consideration. I think it's one that we really, I think yet again, we may need to look at the policy and some of the terms of the policy. And what we're saying is, you know, how many times can you come back for a grant? At what point does it become part of our foundational funding? And hopefully once we get a grant facilitator in place, that person can also be really instrumental in helping folks create other opportunities for themselves for longer term sustainable funding.
Claire?
I appreciate the points that are made, especially the consideration for foundational funding for those groups that are going to come back year after year. Because I can say, having worked in fundraising and grants management for nonprofit organizations, there's a reason why we go back year after year after year. And it's not because we're lazy. It's not because you're not knocking down every door for as much money as you can. It's that there's a limited number of organizations who are funding nonprofit organizations and their works. And what happens is, if every funder says 5-year limit, then what happens is you have organizations shut their doors and new organizations open to take over the programming they were running, who are less experienced, less connected in communities. Longevity has a purpose, serves a purpose, and has some value.
News is we still have half an hour. So. Mayor Elena? Oh. I'm sorry, who's?
So yeah, I
Go.
just want to comment on Rainbow Network, and I'm not sure why that is only given 800. They've asked for that number to me. I don't know where that came from. Looking at the other organizations and events and the arguments that have been made, I don't know what to propose, but not 800. Why is that one not 5,000 and the other ones are? Oh, and also Santa Claus Parade, we got in there at 300 and we just had that conversation. Sorry, Adam, what were you saying? Oh, so that one I think we need to take up to 6 because we just had that conversation. And I think 800, Rainbow Network, 800, just nothing, or I'll just give them more. Like 800 is just kind of a, I don't know. I'm just not comfortable with that.
Thanks for your comment. Councillor Clare?
Yeah, this one, I would speak in terms of the amount of money we give them. I would be interested in talking about that based on what they've proposed. Some of the things I flagged from the budget were a mail drop through Canada Post for $4,000. That seemed like maybe something we wouldn't fund. A tent, chairs, table, things like that. I'm wondering if those are things that we might be able to support them with in kind through municipal assets that already exist rather than them having to purchase and own their own. So if you take those items out, then you would have, yeah, you'd come down to about 2,000, I think, if you add up all of the rest of the items. And I would be comfortable with suggesting that.
At least we're making progress. I said we're making progress, which is good. I wanted to bring back to the table because we hadn't really talked about it, the Rose Quest Personal Care Initiative. Oh, sorry. Are we? Oh, sorry. Okay.
Claus Parade, can we address that one? Are we going with the 3 or are we going with what staff has suggested? I'm saying staff because Jeannie did submit it. I recommend 6.
Any further comment? Yep. Okay, let's tag 6 in there.
Yeah. But if we're using the same metric, then I would say 5 would be the appropriate amount, right?
Sure.
So with the Santa Claus Parade, I believe that Director I'd already said that it actually costs more than that too. So the rest of the budget comes out of the PRC, does it?
No, it doesn't, through the chair. It doesn't come through our operating budget. There is a provision through the community organization that they do have fundraising and donations, and do have on occasion a balance in a bank account that could be carried to the next year. But they really do focus on the requirements for raising funds to be delivering the event.
Okay, I would like to top up fair share.
Just want to sort out, I think we're at
I
5.
thought we already decided Santa Claus.
5 or 6 for Santa Claus, if we get clarification on that. And then I think there was a
5?
suggestion we were next moving to Rose Quest.
5.
5 it is. On to,
Sorry, so what was put forth was Santa gets 5. And then the Rainbow Network, I think the proposal was 2,000. Is that correct? Yeah.
What's the total so far? Okay,
Sure.
well, we gotta get it down.
So can I bring back Rose Quest back on the table for
Certainly.
discussion? I'd like to have just a discussion around the table of what, whether or not we want to stay with 3,000 for this.
Councillor Meek?
So my thoughts on Rose Quest, when you look at the funds, this is an individual that started this out of the goodness of her heart. I don't know her, but when you look at it, I know that she works very, very hard. There isn't any admin fees, there's no website fees, there's no mail out fees, there's no rental fees, all of these other fees that other events are adding to their budget. This individual is taking this on all herself and has connections with various other organizations in the community and has established that network. And I know from mental health perspective that hygiene is a challenge, and it's something that is very difficult for many people. And I think it's a very important service that she's providing.
She operates out of her house. There's a drop box in the driveway, and it's just not healthcare. It's tarps. There's a whole host of things that have been donated. So what is your will with Rosequest?
My will again is to sort of talk about our policy and what we're funding and whether or not we may need to change sort of social services writ large from things that we're excluding from the policy, so that we don't run into these conversations about what, because this, as you point out, it's more than just hygiene. And of course I know about the work, and it's very good work. But again, it's just a question of whether or not this is also veering into a little bit of social services.
Chris?
Yeah, Chair, with the greatest respect, I appreciate it, Madam Mayor. I think it's a given now we're operating outside of the scope of the policy, and let's just move ahead with it. We'll come back on a later time to revisit the policy and make some directions at that time. Can we all agree we're operating outside the scope of the policy and continue forth?
Claire?
I would like to make a motion that we fund the community grants program for this year at the amount of $71,750 per the table on the screen.
Deputy Mayor? You really don't have wiggle room this year. When you see what is coming at us from other parts of the municipal budget, I would suggest that that's a fair way of doing it. I would really suggest we keep it at 70,000.
So how do folks feel about just proportionately cutting from each line to realize the 1750 savings?
Yes.
I did put a motion on the table. Would it not be in order to see if somebody is willing to second it and put that motion to a vote?
Yep, that is correct.
Do we have a seconder on the motion? Seconded by Councillor Ming. Any further discussion on it?
I know we've kind of agreed on the 70,000, but I don't think that we've already locked ourselves into a motion saying that we have to follow that 70. So right now it's kind of open-ended and we don't really have to lock ourselves into anything. So I'm not really sure if this motion is really needed. It just kind of, that way it locks us. Yeah, well, that just locks us into, oh, you mean approve this whole thing as is without any more discussion? Okay.
Ming?
Well, that was going to be my question. So I'm okay with most of this except for Community Care Northumberland. I'm not comfortable with. But my question would be if we pass this, of course, we don't want to revisit this during budget at this length. But if we reflect upon what we decided and did additional research, if we wanted to tweak it at that time, we still have that option to do that. Is that correct?
I mean, the budget's not going to be passed until the budget's passed. So tonight we expect some direction with respect to what's included in that draft budget. Of of course, council's going to have an opportunity at a later date to adjust that.
I'm all about flexibility usually. But we really have a tough budget in front of us. And I've, sat through at least a number of initial conversations, and the kinds of cuts that we're asking departments to make, we're asking boards to make, we have to be consistent, and we have to know that in some ways these are all very important, but we have, this year of all years, we really have to stay on budget. And when we're talking about staying within 70,000, we've got all these to proportionately cut them down to save that 1750, I think is a really responsible way to move forward.
Councillor Adam?
Now, we're talking about a very large budget, and we're talking about $1,000 on the whole budget. So, but if we were to keep with this, I didn't think that we had actually finished with the songs of the next generation. I thought we were still doing it, and then we kind of bounced around a whole bunch of things before we had actually finished that off. And my personal opinion is that technically should be at 3,000, as they are actually running in a surplus. So even still, that would still put them in a surplus, kind of like what we had talked about earlier. And based off of these here. And I realize in attendance too, but the Cultivate, I know we gave 9,500 last year. I wouldn't mind giving them a little bit more, of maybe 10,000, and maybe which would bring our values down, and reallocating to, and there is a reason for this, to the Navy League branch up to 6,500, because when I went through their list, the 6,500 was for the replacement of the furnace, which is an asset management, and the other ones are great events and everything, which is nice, but this is asset management, which I think is very important for the actual building, and that was what the requirement was for the furnace, was the 6,500.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we get into anything new, that's
Yes.
okay. So would you like to reiterate what you just said so we can capture it?
Absolutely. So my suggestion, if everybody agrees, would be bringing Cultivate down to 10,000, which is an increase from last year, but different than what we have here. Increasing the Navy League up to 6,500 to balance off what their furnace cost was. And Songs of the Next Generation, bring them down to 3,000, which would still allow them to be in a surplus, but we're still contributing. That would be my.
So just to reiterate, I'm going to step on the clerk here. I'll turn it over in a second. There's a motion on the floor to approve as is listed at 71,750. Unless that's withdrawn and we want to tweak these, it's up to you, Chair, but I think you're at a point where you need to dispose of that particular motion before we get into the process of.
So
How would I withdraw, given that we've already made changes since the motion?
I would like to support Adams, but then I have a comment. So could we plug in his recommendations if people would like to review that?
like to see the total. Yeah. It's just,
I have a comment.
sorry, what's the total? For me?
I'm just I'd like to question the reduction to Cultivate, because when we're looking at the math and trying to sort of make things equitable for other
proposals that are about a one-off event or a one weekend event, they're getting 5,000. We know that they do 9 events that are completely free over the course of the summer. So what when we're cutting them, yes, they're getting more than others, but if you look at it from that perspective, they're getting significantly less to support each event than we're currently comfortable allocating to the other events.
Councillor Mink?
So with that, the note in here said that Music Night has been going, I think, what was it, 28 years. So my question would be, how much grant money was given to the previous person to organize these events? And I asked that question and we didn't find anything. And I think maybe there's an opportunity to further investigate that. And I go back to my original point of some of the other activities that happen throughout the year where the organizers get entertainment at either a very reduced cost or for free. There is fundraising opportunity in the park. There is collections and 50-50 tickets taken. So if it could be done in the past, I would like to know why it can't be done now. So that's one question that I would have. But the reason I had my hand up was some of these events, such as the Port Hope Gathering, which we're giving 5,000, they asked for 25,000. It has never happened before. So what happens if that 5,000 isn't used or not successful? And I think that's something that we have to think about, because some of these activities have happened. We know they have a base. We know they have people coming back, but some of these other activities, we don't know that yet. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, would be return of monies.
Mr. Chair. Thank you. The other thing, as we talk about Cultivate, I would also just note that on top of the 9 events that were put forward, they're also adding a 4th day of Family Day, which is a new one, which is 10 different venues, prefix restaurants, downtown scavenger hunt. So there's more programming as well. Like there's a significant amount of programming that's coming through this organization for this community. Like we're really, and Adam, you pointed out about the jazz festival bringing stuff into the restaurants. They're doing similar fashion. I would give them more. Like it doesn't seem balanced if we're giving 5,000 for a one-day event and some things, and then we've got 10,000 for this many events. It doesn't seem balanced to me.
Mayor Olena?
So I'm going to suggest we've got, what do we have left over at the bottom there? We've got, okay. So maybe this is a bit provocative, but the jazz folks only did ask us for, they only asked us for 3, right? Oh, they did ask for 5? Okay, well then, can I just suggest that whatever room we've got there still, that we just add that back up to Cultivate?
That's one approach. The other approach is to add it up to fair share.
And my suggestion would be to add it to Community Care Northumberland. To the point that the mayor had made about how difficult times are getting, and these activities are wonderful activities, we also we need culture, we need parks, recreation, we need all of that. But when we're talking about somebody who cannot get from their house into town to a medical appointment, as opposed to somebody that would like entertainment, there's a dramatic difference. And I will continue to argue that the Community Care Northumberland, I do not believe that they are making profit or providing any service that's not required.
Mayor Olena?
I completely see your point, Councillor Mink, and I'd be prepared to bring this forward for our county budget discussions this fall as well. Just for a matter of record, and see whether or not we could ask for some additional funding for that service. And if it's a small ask, I don't think that there would be a lot of difficulty. I mean, I'm not making any promises, but we're not asking for $50,000. And maybe that would be a great way to start a transition of that responsibility.
I would support your thoughts on community cares, but I do have some concerns for the food bank. So
Just
can we discuss those two and see what the will of council is? Councillor Adam, thank you for putting your hand up.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I've already stated earlier my thoughts on increasing the food bank to at least be the $1 per person, which of course is why the extra 2,700 was held off in case anybody had thought maybe that was a good idea.
Director?
I think I'd
Or
just,
CAO?
yes, I'd weigh in on, just from a policy perspective, this isn't a question of merit. The food bank's requested an $8,000 community grant, and you've allocated an $8,000 community grant. Just
Councillor?
Yeah, I know I'm the one, I'm looking at the budget that was submitted by Community Care for the program that they have asked us to contribute to. And it does show that if we give them 9,500, they will run a surplus of $1,764. That said, part of their budget also includes $9,500 from Hamilton Township, which is the other municipality that uses the Western service. And my question is, now I'm leaning towards Councillor Mink there because I'm not sure that that's a guarantee. And I also, feel like we probably should pay, there's some equity there in terms of they're asking the same amount for the two impacted communities.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did-
yep. Why don't we just then put the money into community care, but that's not going to stop me from bringing this up at
Yeah.
at the
All right.
budget.
If Go. Councillor Adams, sorry.
That's okay. So I believe that there's 1,000 left. And the more that, am I right? Yeah, okay. The more that I think about it, the more I actually do understand. Cultivate is running us 9 different programs through the throughout the summer. We did allocate for single events like 5,000 and stuff. I would be completely comfortable with adding the extra 1,000 to the Cultivate festival or the Cultivate whole festival, the Road to Cultivate.
Any comments on that? Councillor Chris?
Again, I'm going to go back. We're spending money we don't have. I understand this little beautiful sheet up here has an extra $1,000. We don't have it yet. And wait until we announce it to the public. Oh, we're taking the $1,000. I know it may be 10 cents per person. I'll give them your phone number. No, we don't need to spend it.
Did I tell you I'm on Telegraph now, not on phone? Okay. Do we leave it as is? One more question. We'll go once
Sorry,
more around.
This isn't about this. I just have a question before we wrap up the meeting. The organizations that we have the foundational funding for, totally different question. Will we be getting a financial report from them to show how that money was spent and that it was in fact spent?
Yep, through the chair, our plan is early in 2024 to bring the foundational funding agencies to council with a updated report of how those funds were used, the financial requirements that are outlined in those agreements. For this year, there has been a request for adjustments to those amounts, and we committed to a 2-year with those amounts, so they have not changed. But as part of the policy, the organizations will be coming with a report.
Perfect, and I just say this because I know that Float Your Fanny will most likely have to rework their plan because of the Sylvan Glen Bridge. So I'm just thinking ahead of how that might work, and I guess they would have a surplus or a deficit if that's the case.
Councillor Chris?
And again, just a question based on that, I'm going to use it as a springboard here. How does our funding in regards to the grants, we're usually the amount that is actually used, would a fair statement say it's actually does not equal what we have allocated in the past? So if we've attributed 70,000, what does our past index indicate? Is that always been spent or is it actually less? Where I'm going with the question is there's going to be some flexibility there, as Councillor Mink and others have stated, that if other communities that we've approved say, oh, we actually can you dip in for an extra 5,000, do we have that flexibility at that time?
We do have donations of 5,000 in a council budget.
Yeah, I think I could just speak to the fact. I'm going to turn it over to finance in just 1 second. On a community grant basis, we make the decision per the budget once a year. Council's got flexibility generally to revisit items throughout the year, but we don't typically bring back mid-year sort of where we're at with community grants and look for that flexibility. But Sruthi, if you wanted to add to that.
I just wanted to clarify and the point on whether that 70,000 was spent. What we have budgeted is what we spend every year. So it's allocated during the budget deliberations, and that's ultimately what's awarded to each of the organizations.
Sorry, let me rephrase the question. I know of past budget, we allocated X to a couple organizations that did not actually come forth and take that money and spend it. Hence, I would suggest to you we had a little bit of a surplus there.
Thank you. Okay, are we set? Do anybody care to make a motion to accept this? Count. Yeah, we're leaving. Yep. Right now we are.
So I'd like to put forth a motion to accept this as our grants, our community
Do you have a
grant funding
seconder?
request.
Seconded by the mayor. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Good meeting.
I have 6 minutes. I'd like you to talk about myself.
So just, yeah, that's great. We've got some direction with respect to community grants tonight. Just so you know, we've received your direction. We will flesh out the motion to include the amounts in the organizations and the overall amount you've approved tonight. You do have a few donations to work through here, and we'll receive your direction on those donation amounts. And then I think that's it. So donations, and then we're good to go.
Okay, so the recommended action, the Finance Committee identify community grant donation requests that are proposed to receive funding in the draft 2024 budget. And all in favor? What is this? Sorry, I'm rushing the process. Okay. All right, I'll open up discussion on donations. Any burning passions of people?
Can
Council-
anybody speak to the Dragon Pottery one? I didn't have enough information for me to understand what the purpose of the donation was.
Anybody?
Can we direct staff, sorry.
No, we're gonna deal
That's
with
what I'm
this
talking
first.
about.
Okay,
So can we ask staff to go back to Dragon Pottery and provide more information at all? I just don't feel like there's enough. It may be great, but we have an opportunity when our budget meetings come along to approve Dragon Pottery, but I just don't feel I have enough to say yes or no at this time.
the other thing is donations are usually typically fluid, and we don't have to make a hard decision at this time. We can do that throughout the course of the year. But I accept that you're right. If nobody knows what it is, shouldn't have knowledge. Councilor Mayor Solana?
Yeah, I mean, I can't support it with what's on paper. The other three seem fine to me.
You request that staff bring back more information on this if possible, on the Dragon,
Yes, I'd be comfortable to say tentatively no based on more information. I don't want to say no. I don't have any information to say yes or no. So unless we get more, then
okay,
it would have to be no.
so we'll direct staff to do that, and we can bring it up during the budget.
I think we've got a suggestion here that if council wanted to provide the direction that we approve the donations listed, excluding Dragon Pottery, and request that donation to be resubmitted for future appraisal.
Do we have to do that in form of a motion or just in direction to you?
Always.
Okay, second, okay, all those in favor? Okay, so I think we've concluded all business for tonight, and I'd like to adjourn the meeting.
So if we're done with the staff reports, the next item on the agenda is the question period, followed by the confirmatory bylaw. So we would have to.
Okay. Questions of council? Questions of the media? Questions of our audience? Name, address, serial number?
My name is Jeff. I represent Cultivate Community. I live on Bramley Street North. I'm just curious, as I had some questions as I was going through each one of those, how, because I know there was some problems last year of how, with some organizations who didn't have proof of their charitable status or nonprofit status. And I'm just curious, because I know that the application didn't change. There's a couple of boxes to tick. If there are any, if there's any due diligence in place for confirming that these organizations who are receiving money are in fact nonprofit organizations, registered, or charitable organizations.
I did actually check the Ontario Business Registry this year and confirmed that they were all, the ones that were registered were not for profit, but it's not a requirement to be registered. So the ones that were registered were not for profit.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, I'll read the confirmatory bylaw. It is now time for the confirmatory bylaw. This bylaw confirms the proceedings that took place this evening and provide for formal adoption through a bylaw. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Mayor Alana, second by Councillor Adam. All those in favor? Okay, and so that confirms the proceedings, and we are adjourned at 6:58. We have 2 minutes. What do you want to talk about? Thank you very much.